Hi, I'm Danny with BuyRadarDetectors.com. I'm here with Bob from Vail Corporation. Bob's the president of Vail Corporation and chief product engineer. Bob's product, Vail G5, works to reduce the effectiveness of police laser guns and IR cameras and is a perfect complementary product for radar detectors. Bob's also a radar detector expert who's driven hundreds of thousands of miles with many of the popular radar detectors that are out there today. And we're going to get his opinion today on the Escort Redline, which you spent a lot of time with. Is that right, Bob?
Oh, yes, indeed.
What do you think of the Redline?
Absolutely brilliant, fabulous detector. I can't say enough good things about the Redline. It's a ferocious detector. I think anybody who's very serious about driving, there's only a couple that I would recommend at that level, and the Redline is certainly in that category. It's just a fabulous detector.
Now, you were the first to discover that band segmentation could create a much quicker detector. That's something that Escort has added to the Redline, and it's one of the big advantages of it. Is that right?
Right, and I have to, I observed it many years ago with the SDIR originally, and really, I also must give a nod to some very senior members online in the online forum community who recognized, some of them in particular, recognized the value, confirmed what I observed, and then lobbied Escort as well online.
Now, the segmentation, that was originally created as a way to eliminate false alerts. Is that right? And you noticed that it had other benefits as well.
Right, yeah. Just briefly, what is segmentation, if somebody wants to know? It is Ka band. There are three primary radar bands in the United States, X, K, and Ka. Ka band is a very wide band of radar, and it consists primarily in the U.S. of 33.8 gigahertz, 34.7 gigahertz, and 35.5 gigahertz. But there's quite a bit more in the Ka frequency that's allocated by the FCC, but that's not used by police radar, particularly in the United States. In Europe, some of them use different frequencies slightly, but in the U.S., there's only primarily three bands. So what Escort has done, and they did this primarily for filtering, is to reduce specifically the areas and regions selectively as to what they're looking at, and they're focusing only on those primary bands. And then by doing that, you're not looking as many where you could have falses, right? Mm-hmm. And you can also reduce the processing overhead, and they call it RDR, radar detection rejection or something along those lines. I think RDR. So you can turn that off as well. So those two things together, segmentation.
Instead of looking at a segment of the band that large, you're looking at this, and this.
Precisely. And what that does is it makes the detector much quicker to see brief reflections of radar further down the road. It doesn't really increase sensitivity per se.
And you don't see false alerts from frequencies in those other areas.
That's correct. And what I found in the real world, it couldn't be reduced, necessarily reproduced in a chamber, which is in the lab, which is why Escort was slow to adopt the reality that this could actually happen. But in the real world where you drive, which is where I test these things only, you have the ability to see something briefly, and with a very sensitive detector like the Redline, the M3 platform, you really can get the benefit of getting some incredible alerting improvements. And I've seen areas where the Redline can alert many, 30 seconds or more in some cases.
Now, I think of the Redline as raw power, sort of. I mean, and there's not a lot of frills with this detector. You don't have the GPS built in. You don't have all of the kind of fluffy features like that. This is just raw performance. Is that a good way to describe it?
Right. I would exactly. And there's really two different segments. The max is on the high end for the conventional. This is for the hardcore. I would consider the driver, and I would consider the max would be like the automatic transmission or the DGT, the dual clutch type deal. Mm-hmm. You see PDK, and the Redline would be for a stick driver. You know what I mean? And then
so more configurability with the Redline. If you like to tinker with the settings and play with things yourself, would this be a better choice, maybe? Yeah,
for those who don't necessarily care about the GPS capability, or they want to rely on something like Escort Live as an extension to that with the iPhone app or Android app, or with Waze or something along those lines. This is more of a, this is a, stripped down. It's like a GT3 Porsche, right? 911. Mm-hmm. It's stripped down, as opposed to a turbo, which is incredibly powerful, but has a lot more.
Now, does this come at the expense of more false alerts? I mean, if you've got better performance and more range here, is it a more noisy detector?
Well, I would say yes and no, but it's certainly not over the top, and it's very livable. I mean, that's the most important thing. I find it to be very livable. But you know, the couple things about the Redline, the M3, which is, I'm going to pull one of these out. This is really something we haven't even talked about yet. It's really super important with these detectors. This has a dual antenna system, one for XK and one for KA. Okay, you can see the actual two curves here, two lenses here. And this detector is the M3 platform. Internally is referred to the M3 platform. It's a much more expensive antenna design, but it does something that people didn't think was even possible, which is it's a stealth detector. That's important. It can't be detected by what is called a radar detector or an RDD, such as a Spectre. Spectre is used in places like Virginia, where detectors are outlawed, ridiculously so. In Connecticut years ago, they used to be, not any longer. You cannot, even in federal guidelines, if you have a CDL, you're driving a truck, you're not supposed to have a detector. It's frownable. And if you're on a military base, if you find yourself on a military base occasionally, and they run radar, it can't be detected. So this is the only detector, the M3 platforms, the STIR Plus, STR Plus, right? And the Passport 9500 CI, but this is the only standalone windshield.
STI
detector.
Magnum.
Magnum too, thank you. Current, yeah, right. Thank you for correcting me. See, I'm not that much of an expert when it comes down to it. But anyway, this is the band segmented version. I think they call that the Expert Edition, technically, or something like that.
Right.
The original Redline I found was a slow detector, frankly. I didn't care for it, even though it was super sensitive. But this thing is just about perfect. It really is. The other thing this detector has that the others don't, and again, it's a mixed blessing. It's all really going to depend here. This has extreme off-axis detection, and what off-axis means is, you know, detections of sources of radar that happen at a greater
Not
far
straight
off.
on, sort
Correct.
of coming from a side angle.
Correct. Now, while radar is only used primarily when you're closer to straight on, but if you're going around bends, or if you're driving on secondary roads like in upstate New York where there's lots of more bends, or West Virginia, you know, you're having a lot of curves, things like that. If you've ever been on the tail of Dragon in Tennessee, an incredible road where there's lots of turns, you know, you really do see the benefit of extreme off-axis detection, and no detector can really match that, particularly on KA in particular. Valentine can be close, but I still have to give the edge to that. But there's a downside to that too. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. If you're driving around town, you know, you're going to have a lot of X and K off to the side because of these, you know, you're going to be perpendicular to a lot of these sources you go through. So you can tend to get a lot more falses with that. But in that environment, I look at this as an ultimate highway radar detector, where the Max can, you know, be well on highway as a contrast.
So perhaps the Max is a good all-around or city detector.
Correct.
This is, if you're doing a lot of highway driving.
Correct.
You would recommend the Redline.
Long distance warrior type stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, in my case, I have a lot of detectors. Now you could say, well, is it really needed to have that many detectors or multiple detectors? I could say yes. You know, the price of one ticket, $600, $700, $800. I mean, it's not uncommon now. So, I mean, that pays for two of these, and all you need is one save. So, you know, for some of the hardcore enthusiasts online, we have more than one detector because, you know, it's a different tool for different things. But I can't recommend this detector enough. It is an absolutely fabulous radar detector. And the other thing I'll comment about this is, you notice some of the other detectors from Escort have the buttons on the top.
Right.
They have a drop display here, stepped.
The buttons are right below the front
Exactly. Display. So it's a little easy. You don't have to, you know, feel as much. And if you have it low, you can actually see these. The other important thing with the newer Redlines.
That's also, let me point out, great if you're doing a visor mount. If you're mounting the detector on a visor, you don't really have access to the buttons on top of it.
That's absolutely correct. And let's see if I can power this puppy up. Again, not the OLED display, but and nice and loud. You can hear that sucker pop. Really nice and bright. The nice thing I like about red, although some people like the blue, the red doesn't change at night. It's a great, that's why all like the military jets, they have the red, because it doesn't make your eyes, you know, constrict. Right. So it's much easier all around to see this, and you can see it's extremely bright. What else can I say about this detector? It's just fabulous. I don't know. I can't recommend this highly enough.
Well, Bob, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for your opinions and your review here of the Escort Redline. Remember, if you're going to purchase an Escort Redline, you want to combine it with a product like Veil G5. this detector is not going to be enough to work against police laser. This detector is not going to give you enough time to react and avoid a ticket if police are using laser. But when combined with a product like Veil G5, then there's a good chance you're going to avoid a ticket.
Right. May I add one thing to that since
Please.
you touched on that? Yeah. Since you mentioned laser, and I should have mentioned this, I failed to mention it, which is the Redline has Escort's fabulous laser detection capability. Where some of the other detectors aren't as good. The Redline, they've pulled out all the stops, even relative to the Max. And I put this right up there with the Valentine, just about. I mean, the Valentine I give a little bit of an edge to in laser, but this sucker is very good at laser. And as I've said a million times before, I think it's essential to have a detector with a good laser section. Mm-hmm. And this puppy does deliver. So all around, just an absolute fabulous for a driver that is, very, enthusiast and is willing to go through. And this does segmentation as well, obviously. As I say, a fabulous order. You know what the price point on this sucker is at the top?
$499.
There you go. So, but worth every penny in my opinion.
If you have any questions on the Escort Redline, please check out our website at buyradardetectors.com. If you like this video and want to see others like it, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/buyradardetectors. I'm Danny. For Bob from Veil Corporation, thanks for watching.